Hi, Terry here again. I've been focusing these past videos on reimagining retirement, or taking a fresh look at the second half of adult life, what it could be like, pushing back against some of the cultural expectations that we might have, or those expectations that we might experience in a faith community or another community or group that focuses on life in that second half. I've called it Retirement Reimagined, from ordinary to extraordinary. I'm thinking of this phase of life, this midlife and beyond, is a time to expand various areas of our life, which might be in opposition to the cultural expectation that aging decades of life are a time to constrict, to pull back, to solidify, to slow down, to stop. And certainly there are areas of our life that become more limited, depending upon physical and emotional and mental development that happens. But there are so many arenas of life in which to maximize, to expand, to reimagine, to rework. And over the past videos, talked about expanding or reimagining our physical health, emotional health, our heart, our mind. How do we expand our mind, maximize with the experience that we have, with the decades of learning and absorbing and wondering, to expand ourself, to expand our morals. And this one is the seventh of seven. Saved it for last because it can be a little bit tricky for many of us, and that is that the second half of adult life is a time to expand our faith. Expand our faith, especially for those of us who grew up in a strong faith tradition, one that is based on knowledge and set understanding. To expand our faith, it's different way of seeing the second half of life. And I just noted some things. I'm working from a little booklet that I put together a number of years ago. And that is the second half of life, or this is a phase of life in which I am moving from a set and settled faith. I taught for years a settled faith, principles, creeds, and so on. And this is now a time in my life to have an expanding, growing faith, moving beyond what was set. The answers that I had, allowing some questions to emerge. This is a phase of life where I'm shifting or expanding from knowing the truth to seeing my truth as incomplete and partial. That there are things to learn about what it means to believe into more than I can see, a mystery, a wonder. Rather than standing firm in my values and beliefs, this is a season to sit with some big questions, some things that I've wondered about for years but kind of pushed into the background, or as one psychologist put it, put all those doubts or questions or wonderings into a closet in my brain somewhere, or emotions, and put it in a closet and then put a lock on it. Well, it's time to unlock, open those doors. And I like this. Rather moving from or expanding beyond having God and faith all figured out. I don't know how many books I had on creeds, confessions, institutes, commentaries, and so on that had things all figured out. And this is a time for me now to wonder more about the mysteries of life and of God. To wonder, to allow mystery to be mystery. And some ideas for expanding your faith. If this resonates with you, and say, there are things that I've wondered about, or there are still things that I can learn, I can experience. Maybe I don't have everything figured out. Some ideas. Maybe read one page a day from a book, such as, and I've done this, there's a book called The Essential Mystics, Poets, Saints, and Sages. The Essential Mystics, Poets, Saints, and Sages. You can Google it or look it up on Kindle. An amazing book. And the wonder of it is it quotes these folks from all sorts of different faith traditions. And rather than arguing with them, I just sit and listen. It's amazing what it does. Write down some of those big questions or doubts that you might have before or that you're experiencing now. Things you just wonder about. Things that maybe would have been uncomfortable or wrong to ask. I know when I was serving as a teaching pastor in a Reformed church, it would have been wrong, unacceptable for me to ask some questions that I'm asking now. Just write them down. Doesn't make you a heretic just to write down questions that you have. Things that unsettle you. I believe that in this time of my life, I'm learning much more from my questions than I am from the answers that I've been given. Just sit with the questions. And if you're from a Christian tradition, try saying with what I say. I read this and it makes sense to me. Jesus is my primary representation of who God is and what a life full of God looks like. Key phrase being my. I come from a Christian, it's my DNA. But Jesus is my primary representation of who God is and what a life full of God looks like. My primary representation. What that does is it gives me space to wonder about what other traditions, who is their primary representation, or who are their primary representations, and what can I learn from their primary representations? It shifts from saying Jesus is the only representation to saying Jesus is my primary. And that just opens me up to lots of things. And allow myself to wonder how my faith tradition's teachings might be partial. Or how might they hinder? For example, my faith tradition, Calvinist, Reformed, begins or very early on orients toward total depravity, that there's something flawed in every part of us. And I've wondered about that. I'm believing into that might be a wrong place to begin with. A core that doesn't make sense. Begin with original blessing rather than original sin. So I'm wondering about a big question like that, and I've learned that from somebody else and recognize that my faith tradition has some real weaknesses in it. And I need to supplement it, or I need to correct it or repent from that, learn a new way of seeing. Oh, and this one is a challenge, even after years, decades of doing this. Learn to be still for at least 10 minutes a day, to know divinity, to experience divinity, mystery, and wonder with my heart. Just to sit quietly, maybe to take a slow walk, sit in nature, watch a sunrise or sunset, notice birds singing or animals scurrying. So busy thinking all the time to learn to simply be. And read books and watch documentaries that represent the best and most helpful values, perspectives, and beliefs of other faith traditions. It's all about expanding and wondering and allowing yourself to say, this is a season of life when I am secure enough. I remember talking to someone a while back, and I said that I cherish faith traditions or faith communities where I might be sitting next to somebody that has a very different perspective from mine. Maybe comes from a different faith tradition or no faith tradition at all. I just enjoy sitting and learning and interacting. And the first response of that person was, oh, you must be very, very strong in your faith. Thinking, very strong in my faith. And what they were saying is to sit with people like that and not being influenced away from what is right and true. It's a very different perspective for me now. It's like I don't want to sit next to them because I want to convert them. I'm sitting next to them because I'm thinking maybe we can convert each other, that we can learn from each other, that we can add to each other, that we can expand each other's faith, maybe help each other ask more questions and soften some of our answers. So think about it. This stage of life, this midlife and beyond, can you reimagine that time as a season of life in which to expand your faith beyond the boundaries, beyond the acceptable questions and answers, and just say, I'm in a season of life now where I can ask those questions. I can sit with those questions, that I can soften answers, or maybe just say, those simple answers don't make sense, that I can live with mystery and not knowing. So think about that. And think about the aging decades of life as a time to expand, to maximize, to find new life and fresh ways of living and being in all aspects of your life. This is an incredible season of life. As I've said to several times, with some sense of humor, but also sense of truth. I've been young, and I'm now older. In many respects, I prefer older. Sure, aches and pains, forget some things that I might have memorized, known before, or remembered before. Not as much endurance, maybe can't sleep as long. Those kinds of things, that's the reality, but the wonder of this season. Reimagine. Talk to you next time.